Hello and welcome to the Geeks Review. I'm Royce.
I'm Joshua.
I'm Matt.
Frank Herbert's Dune has defined sci-fi stories for generations, for decades, as much as Tolkien's writings for fantasy. It's widely been considered to be unfilmable. The director Jodorowsky tried it in the 70s and failed, and the new Dune film is expected out in a few weeks' time, but today we're going to be talking about David Lynch's 1984 movie, which stars Kyle MacLachlan, Patrick Stewart, and Sting, of all people.
Yeah, I know.
Dune, David Lynch's Dune, is despised by the director. It's been disowned. There is a extended cut, but it's got nothing to do with him. It's credited to Alan Smithy. But the original is available to watch on Stan, and we're going to be talking about it today. Or at least Matt and I are going to be talking about it today, because Josh didn't get a chance to see it.
Sadly, no.
You can just sit there and go, really? Wow.
Hopefully.
That is interesting.
Yeah. It's a bad film. I saw it when I was 10, I think, with my dad, who told me at the time that it wasn't a great adaptation of the book, but he showed it to me anyway. It's very long. Actually, it's not. It's only 2 hours and 20 minutes, but it feels long. And then I watched it again when I was 15 because I was interested, but I also hardly remember watching it then. And so when you told me that you wanted to talk about it in anticipation of the new film, I was like, maybe I'll pay attention this time. And I did. If I start off with a positive, it looks amazing. Such a beautiful looking film. Well, all the practical stuff and the miniatures and
The worms, yes.
yeah, all that stuff looks amazing. I love the what are they called? The still suits. I love the exterior shots of the Harkonnen city.
Yes.
Green and stinky and everything. And the sets are all amazing. Like, there's this one scene where Paul's on Caladan in his family home. And there's just this staircase, this corridor, this big black kind of spongy archway. And it's like, wow. Did H.R. Geiger design the film?
He was involved in the original one, directed by Jodorowsky, that never came to be.
Oh.
And I believe he and Lynch didn't see eye to eye. I don't think. This tends to be the case with Geiger. He was very difficult to get along with, it would seem, with a few people.
Because the designs were super Geiger.
Yeah.
Like this kind of, not cyborg, but like organic technology.
Biomechanic was kind of what he
Biomechanic,
specialised
that's
in.
what it's called, yeah.
And especially with the still suits, yeah, they're like almost like rib cages, but like covered in this technology. And yeah, very alien, now you mention it.
Yeah, super alien. And all the... and I love the way the navigators look. These people who... I think the implication is that they were humanoids.
They were,
but over 4,000 years of excessive use of the spice, which
The
is
space melange.
spice melange, which is the driving force of the story. They morph into these floating telepathic squiddy things that are able to fold space.
So they're not using Tom Brady's feces?
What?
South Park episode. They
Oh
did
my gosh.
They did a thing on it with like microbacteria and such.
Oh.
Yeah.
Matt's face is just like, what? No, but yeah, talking about Dune itself, much like Josh's comment, not to throw you under the bus again, it just throws you into weirdness. Like,
The weirding.
yeah, well, the weirding words. But yeah, it's just strange right out the front gate. I mean, you can kind of compare this to Star Wars in a way, because Dune has been so, I guess, influential, you know, that you can sort of find it has an impact upon Star Wars or Alien or indeed any kind of sci-fi that's followed it.
So it's really left its mark, has it?
Absolutely. It was written in the 60s, the book. And super high concept science fiction. My main issue with the film, honestly, is obviously the book has a lot in it. You could probably say...
It's a thick book. I've seen them.
You could probably say it's got too much for one movie.
Yeah.
And I haven't read the book, which I should have, and I've been meaning to, but I haven't. But I know the book is very cerebral, and lots of the characters, you know, a lot of the story is told through the characters' thoughts.
Yes.
which you can do in a book, but the movie literally has inner monologue all throughout it.
Yeah, that was an addition from the producers because they wanted it to be more like the book, and they felt that whatever Lynch had directed wasn't adequate. So they added in these monologues, which worked for the character of Paul, played by Kyle MacLachlan. But when we've gone and got the character played by Max von Sydow, and
Max von Sydow.
He's in this, as is Patrick Stewart, which was a nice surprise.
With a mullet.
I knew about Stewart. I didn't know about Max von Sydow.
Patrick Stewart ends up with a mullet.
He does.
Really?
Still bald, but he has a mullet.
Rocking the Bill Bailey look.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, what is this film? Because we've spoken a lot about stuff in it, but what's the plot? And I guess fundamentally it's about corporate espionage in a way.
Yeah, it is. It's about empires and exploitation and stuff. Basically, the idea is there's this big feudal almost. It's quite a feudal society, but it's intergalactic. It's set in the year 10,091.
There's a planet called Arrakis which has on Earth this compound which is invaluable in space navigation.
Yeah.
By ingesting it, it basically allows the mind to reach
Yeah.
beyond its natural capabilities and understand it and comprehend it.
Yeah,
So
it's-
naturally,
It's called the spice. He who controls the spice controls the universe. It prolongs life and it expands the brain and stuff.
Hence the slug evolutions.
Yes, the navigators, who are these people who have been addicted to spice for 4,000 years and have evolved to such a point where they can fold space, which is kind of like warp in Star Trek, I guess. Traveling
Yeah.
without moving.
the kind of the interstellar event horizon, sort of like punching holes in the universe and
Yeah.
passing the pencil through.
So there's these two royal houses, the Atreides and Harkonnen, and the Emperor of the universe. He wants to, because the House Atreides, the population of the universe quite like the House Atreides, the Emperor is scared that he's going to be overthrown by the Atreides. So he sets up this whole plot with the slimy Harkonnen family to put the Atreides house in charge of Arrakis, the planet that the spice is mined on, the only place you can get the spice.
The titular Dune.
Yeah, which is very dangerous, and then he will help the Harkonnens overthrow the Atreides. That's the plot at the start. But it just so happens that Paul Atreides, the son of the Duke, he happens to have been engineered for 90 generations to be the Kwisatz Haderach, which is the being that can actually understand the spice, control it, and bring balance back to the universe.
It's a savior story.
It is. It really is. But they don't hide that. Like right from the start, they say,
Yeah.
"Could he be the one?" Like it's not a cop out.
And it's less about fate and it's more about actually coming up with something in it, engineering it to be true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like it was written in the text. It's like someone said this and they willed it into being and they made it so.
Anyone who hasn't seen the film or read the book listening to this just switched off, because that was a lot of garbage that just came out of my mouth.
Yeah.
But it is a really interesting story, but the movie fails to capture it engagingly and clearly.
The new one, from what I have seen of it, definitely streamlines it a lot and really just breaks it down to the bare essentials. You've gone and got, in place of like an opening crawl, comparing this to Star Wars, which does so well with Star Wars, just throwing you into the plot. It begins with this introduction by the daughter of the Emperor, who kind of explains things, and she's not really a character within the story at all.
No, she's not.
She's barely there, she's an observer at most, and she kind of sets up the world, and then a lot of explanations as to this is this planet, this is that planet, this is this faction. It's kind of like explaining like a game, like a tabletop game. Like this is this faction, this is this, this is this, this is this. Rather than doing it organically. Which is, really the tricky thing, because trying to describe the story naturally doesn't come easy because the movie fails to do that.
It only occurred to me at the end of the film that Paul Atreides was played by Kyle MacLachlan. I was actually watching the film and thinking, this guy's too much of a Chad to be Paul Atreides. Because they keep describing him as the little one, the boy, all this stuff. But then you've got Kyle MacLachlan with the strongest jaw you've ever seen. And, he's pretty tall, actually, and quite strong.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh, why is anyone surprised he can fight like that, you know?
Yeah, I just
Whereas I
finished
think
watching Twin Peaks when I saw it, so going back to it, it was obviously quite a few years before, so he's quite a lot younger here, and especially now, you know, so he did feel a bit more youthful, and sort of as the story goes on, it crosses many years. It does feel like he grows into it a bit more, but yeah, you're right, he does come across as maybe a little bit too old. It's a real sort of
Not even old, just strong. Just like typical hero. I think Timothy Chalamet is probably a better cast.
yeah, he's a
This
bit
is
more.
the 2021 character. He's like a twink, this little little guy.
He's distilled Adam Driver.
Maybe. There's lots of great actors in this.
Yeah,
There's
like-
Patrick Stewart and Sean Young and stuff. And Sting
Yes.
from The Police,
Yeah.
who has this weird incestuous relationship with the disgusting Baron Harkonnen, his uncle.
He's terrifying in that he's overwhelming. Like he's kind of there's so much going on with him. Like he's this large man who's covered in boils, and the idea is that he was like poisoned or sort of cursed to be this way after doing something quite horrific we can't really talk about on the radio. And he's just so large and immobile that he has these like implanted anti-gravitational devices that allow him to fly. So he zips around and
Shouting and whooping and hollering.
he massacres a man.
Yeah, everyone on his planet has this thing called a heart plug where the Baron can easily just unplug it and the person will die right there. And he seems to get a kick out of it,
Yes.
shall we say.
The look on Josh's face is just, well.
Yeah. And I'm sure in the book it's very clear and everything what is happening, and it's very great character building. But in this film, it's just like, well, that happened. Oh, that happened. Oh, that happened.
Yes.
And it becomes very overwhelming and confusing. But the design of the film is just amazing. And the disgustingness of the Baron is beautiful in a way.
As I said, I mean, this film was sort of butchered by the producers, and David Lynch didn't have a good time on this film. He's basically disowned it, and mentioning it just seems to depress him. I mean, David Lynch has directed Eraserhead, obviously Twin Peaks, and Mulholland Drive, all those kind of films which are both...
Alien 3.
That was David Fincher,
Oh.
of Gone Girl. And
Oh, okay.
Yes. But I could see your confusion, because I was thinking, didn't he direct, you know, a sci-fi film that was poorly received and he's disowned it? Oh, no, wait, that was Alien 3 with David Fincher. David Lynch was Dune. Yeah, it's a film I guess you really need to go into with an open mind, because it throws a lot of stuff at you, and it's quite dense, it's quite heavy, and trying to talk about it is just...
It really helped me to watch it with subtitles. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes.
Lots of words, like new words that he's come up with, like Fremen, Atreides, Muad'Dib,
Yeah,
Usul.
it's might be of interest to you, Josh, because it's got like analogies of like colonialism and, you know, sort of campaigns across the Middle East, and it's all very relevant, it feels.
It already sounds pretty interesting as it is, despite the massive turd that it turned out to be, apparently.
Yeah, it's not totally unwatchable. Maybe
Yeah.
it's a
It's
slog.
just unbearable.
There was a mini-series made in the late 90s or early 2000s. I haven't seen it, but my dad, he thinks it tells the story much better. Because there's just too much for 2 hours. It's just too much.
Yeah, from what I understand with the new film, which is going to be a two-parter.
It is a two-parter.
Very bold from what I've seen. It opens and it says Dune Part 1. And Part 2 was only just confirmed last week as of the time of recording.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it
So
wasn't...
they just made part 1 and went, well,
If it does well, awesome. If it doesn't, oh well.
Yeah.
wow.
And, God, a lot of tweeting about it. So many memes online.
Apparently,
It's,
it's going to be. They're going to cover the other books in the series.
They're doing a prequel or a sequel series set within the universe of the new film, which is going to be on HBO Max or whatever.
Damn you, HBO.
Showcase and binge here in Australia. It's very colourful. It's very weird, the 1984 Dune. But as I said, David Lynch basically disowned it. But yeah, if you're a fan of his work, I'd say you could probably go into this and appreciate it more, because a lot of his films are very, difficult to decipher, more on a surreal, metaphysical level, whereas this is a bit more straightforward, a few weird concepts here and there, at least in comparison. But yeah, it's really dense
Yeah.
and doesn't do it the best.
Yeah, there's lots of story in there that it just really fails to get across. And the constant inner monologue, the constant shots of every single character staring at something and that actor's echoey voice playing over the top of it, it just becomes mind-numbing after a while.
There is a difference from what I've heard. There's this concept within the universe called the weirding word, where basically it's kind of like dragon shouts in a way in Skyrim, or kind of like Jedi Force, Jedi mind tricks kind of thing, where your words can influence another person if delivered correctly and can be used as a weapon. And it's kind of like a kung fu. And David Lynch didn't want to do kung fu in the sand, so he came up with this thing where the words are then siphoned into this gun, which is then used like as a projectile in this handheld gun.
Oh, so it's like True Names.
What's this?
True Names, the wizarding thing and Witches and Demons. If you're able to learn a thing's true name, you can then control it.
Sort of, yeah.
Bit like that.
But it's this power that's then siphoned through this weapon, and the end battle is just basically cut to person shouting, shooting a gun.
Shatska!
Cut to someone getting blown up.
Yeah. Well, there's one point where I think it's Paul, who has like 5 names in the film. They call him Paul Atreides, Paul Muad'Dib, the Kwisatz Haderach, Usul. He has like 5 names. There's one point where he uses his word and he fires off the energy without needing the gun. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And now that you've explained to me that in the book it's more like kung fu, it kind of makes a bit more sense.
Yeah, which is what the new film does, from what I understand, and I think even the miniseries did it as well. But it's consistent. That one incident you bring up, it's consistent with the book, but it's not consistent with the rest of the film, which leads to a bit of a weird blend. It's kind of like if Star Wars and Luke cut someone in half without picking up his lightsaber, kind of like that. And there's a lot of similarities, I guess, between this and Star Wars, because it was definitely made in response to Star Wars, which was just massive and such an influence upon, 70s and 80s culture. I mean, you've even got a central character who's got a relatively normal name, Paul and Luke, it's just next to Leia and Vader and Harkonnen.
I remember being young and seeing a main character called Paul and thinking that it was like Luke, but less cool. Because like the name Atreides, wow. Oh, that's fantastic. That sounds awesome.
It's Greek in origin, apparently.
Makes sense.
Sort of this Greek lineage, which is, 10,000... 8,000 years into the future, That's really cool.
Then Paul.
Paul.
Like Luke Skywalker is a very cool name.
Yeah.
Paul Atreides. Oh.
It's always funny when you've got a big dramatic character who's just got a normal name, like Phantom of the Opera.
Eric.
Eric's got power to it, though, like Magneto, Eric Lynch.
Yes.
A sandworm.
Yes.
The giant butthole.
The giant butt. That looks very cool.
A lot of practical models, and you really get a sense of scale when you first see one, how it just appears beneath the mining ship and just consumes it whole, and there's like crackles of yellow lightning.
Yeah, worm sign, they call it. They
Yeah.
can see when a worm's about to come up because the lightning is running across the sand.
Yeah. Again, just visually arresting, but it's a lot of text.
Also, the Fremen, the natives on the planet Arrakis, and people who live on Arrakis, it's described as bluer than blue eyes. And rather than use contacts, they superimpose blue over the actor's entire eyes, and it's really weird.
Yeah, like they're glowing almost. It's like so blue. And from what I've seen in the new one, I think it's digitally enhanced as well. But it just sort of feels like the whites of the eyes and the irises just go completely.
Oh, I thought that was a side effect of the spice.
It is the spice,
It is.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a line where it's like, I have been here long enough for my eyes to change. Yeah.
Brad Dourif is in this as well.
Who was
Chucky.
he?
He was the big eyebrow man who was...
There are a couple of those.
Yeah.
Is he Thurl or the Harkonnen friend?
Harkonnen's, yeah, the one who gets killed by Leto.
The tooth.
Yes.
Oh yeah, there was a point where someone was like, "Hey, you're gonna die, but before you die, your enemy is gonna come and gloat at you. Here, let me give you a poison tooth so you can bite him."
Yeah, like crack the tooth and breathe
Yeah.
into his face and poison him and kill him.
Yeah.
The whole subplot with the Doctor was quite set up. Like you're talking about how all the Harkonnens have this like heart plug, and then there's a guy who sneaks into the Atreides base, and the Doctor goes and like examines him or something, and sees on the X-ray, really impressive effect, that one. It sees the heart plug on him, and it sort of sets that up that this betrayal is coming. And from what I've heard, it's not as well communicated in the new one, but the new one, from what I can tell, which is still a few weeks off here by the time we go to air, seems to be an improvement by and large.
It's mostly gotten positive reviews. I haven't read any. I've seen the scores. It's got like a 70 or 80%, I think. So
you have seen this a few times, and Josh, you've just listened to us talk about it.
Yeah.
Is it living up to your expectations about what you kind of thought this was about?
Not really. I didn't have any expectations. This is just creating them now.
I want to read the book.
Yeah, I think that might be a key to understanding, for me at least, with the next point. Why do you think this is so iconic? Why do you think this is so highly regarded?
Yeah, well, there was nothing really in the science fiction genre at that point that was so high concept and bold, really. Like, honestly, the most influential things I can think about before it would be John Carter of Mars and War of the Worlds, hugely genre defining.
That's very true, actually.
But those were 1890s, early 1900s. I can't really think of anything really between in the following 60 years. Maybe the film Metropolis
Was lost to time, mostly. But yeah, you're right.
and something that it was so bold. It was very much like Lord of the Rings. You're right, a very complex, rich world, universe that was constructed, and lots of lore and rules. A completely new and a place for people to really get lost and think about. Definitely too much for 2 hours.
Yeah, well, I mean, Lord of the Rings, that was 3 books and got 3 films. What do you think about Lord of the Rings? Because we've talked about it on the show before, and we've sort of tried to become fans of that, but haven't really been able to get through to
I
it.
can never stay awake during fellowship.
Really? Oh, I'm also not a huge mega fan of it, but I watched all 3 of them earlier this year as an adult after trying to watch them as a kid a number of times. And they're super beautiful, actually. The world is amazingly rich, like Dune. And I actually cried a little bit in Fellowship towards the end of that. The book's been out for 70 years.
Yeah.
Boromir dies.
It's played by Sean Bean. It's written.
But yeah, no, that really got me. And Dune is very much like Lord of the Rings. Such rich world building. And you say Lord of the Rings as 3 books and 3 movies, but each of those movies is worth 2 movies. So I think the fact the new Dune is meant to be a 2 or maybe even 3-parter, definitely the right way to go.
They were really the foundations for a lot of what we take for granted with sci-fi and with fantasy, both Dune and Lord of the Rings. Like, we probably wouldn't have A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones, without Lord of the Rings, which kind of set the template. We wouldn't have things like Skyrim or Dragon Age or Dungeons and Dragons, And for Dune, I mean, we probably wouldn't have Blade Runner, we wouldn't have Alien, because, I mean, a lot of the stuff that was there went on to be Ridley Scott's Alien. He was actually going to direct Dune before David Lynch came on board. It was really weird, because at the time, David Lynch had also only just directed Eraserhead and The Elephant Man. And
the John Hurt movie.
Yeah, John Hurt and Anthony Hopkins. And they went, yeah, you're fine for this. But I think, I've long had a theory that big studios just go and hire these, independent directors to go and direct their big, whatever movies and kill their career. Sometimes it works out, like Taika Waititi, wins out, and others, like the guy who did the Assassin's Creed movie, had done a few.
Oh, yeah.
He did like a few Australian movies which were like gruesome, but highly regarded, and now who knows where he is.
The scale of Dune, it struck me halfway through that it's enormous. Like, it's literally a universe-wide story. focused on one planet, but it's huge and it's more than just any one character. At least this film, it does fail to make any of the characters relatable or give them any sort of arc or something. Like, they all just do what they do, and that's why they do it.
Yeah. At most, I can say, the Baron stands out because he's just so much. Paul, because you do get a bit of an insight into what he's thinking, but it's a cheap trick, voiceover. But everyone else sort of falls by the wayside or just holds up because of their visual impact, like Sting.
Sting hardly speaks.
Yeah. He's just such a weird visual that he sort of sticks in your mind. And there's pugs in this movie as well.
I heard about them.
Lots of pugs.
Patrick Stewart goes into battle holding a pug.
Yeah, no, I heard about that. It was meant just to be a reference to the royal family with all the corgis.
Maybe.
Right. Makes sense.
Maybe.
But anyway, that's Dune, directed by David Lynch. It's all Dune fans really had up until the release of the new film, which we'll be talking about on the show in a few weeks' time. Anyway, that's about it. I'm Royce.
I'm Joshua.
I'm Matt.
And we'll see you next time.